American citizen and veteran of a foreign war here, who is a firm believer in our Constitution and our Bill of Rights being the law of the land. And also, all sworn officers, that includes the president and vice president, members of Congress. The cabinet is bound to this as well. We have laws for a reason. So, in what world is it remotely acceptable to continue allowing the lawlessness of this fascist Republican regime? And if you don't like that label, too bad, so sad. It fits. Look at Umberto Eco's 14 criteria that define as best we can what fascism is, because it's a slippery term. But we are there. Heather Cox Richardson, a very careful with words historian, said it just the other day that it fits. Experts, the foremost experts on fascism, have said this is a fascist government. The people in charge are fascists. They are ruling like fascists. They have complete and total disregard for the law. The president himself just said, when asked what restraints are on you, or could be, he said his own mind and morality, which doesn't exist. This man is not, does not have the mental capacity for this. He is being puppeted, essentially, by members of his cabinet, including basically a Nazi, Stephen Miller. Marco Rubio is manipulating him. This whole business with Venezuela and Cuba, Stephen Miller with Greenland, the domestic terrorism actions of DHS, CBP, and ICE. They are not operating within the bounds of the law. They're not. It's documented. I don't care what your stupid and wrong opinion is. On matters of law, honestly, people on the right, people to the right of me, really need to shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. How many times do you have to be proven wrong? The right wing seems to think, I don't know if it's just contrarianism, which that's just you being an asshole. That's not you being clever or enlightened. You're just being an asshole. You're being a horrific monster, especially when you kind of laugh or immediately defend the ICE agent that had no business even giving this woman commands, that was murdered in cold blood in broad daylight, caught on camera, on video from multiple angles, multiple people that have operated with instruction on how law enforcement officers are supposed to operate when it comes to people in vehicles, have said this guy would get life in prison. We have first-degree homicide and second-degree homicide with the follow-up shots. Then the vice president is saying, effectively, saying it clearly, that the immigration crew, they're fascists, they're the Gestapo. They're going to start going door to door. Again, people have a Fourth Amendment right that would be violated by these actions. They come to the defense of the shooter. They're saying that the woman, who's just a mother, standing up, speaking up for people in her community, she was just coming home after dropping her kid off from school, or at school, and came home to this mess with these invaders coming into her community, coming into her neighborhood, and she was just going home. She got conflicting orders. That guy, who shouldn't have been involved in the situation in the first place because apparently he had issues in the past, that is not a defense. That's an indictment on the federal government for having no standards, for no measures of accountability, and then for them to say they can operate with impunity, that somehow this was his job. What? To just shoot citizens in the face? If that can happen to her, that can happen to you, and it's not the first one. There have been multiple deaths by ICE. If you say you're for law and order, you have to recognize the fact that the so-called enforcers of the law are bound by the law as well. They have to operate lawfully. And ICE, DHS, CBP, they have had so many incidents in which they violated the law, they violated citizens' rights and undocumented people's rights, committed acts of brutality that are completely indefensible. This whole regime has to go. They cannot be trusted. They lie to the public. When we have clear evidence, they lie to the courts. The judges now are like, okay, so we can't trust you anymore. It's lawless. And now they're saying they can go door to door. And if you don't follow their orders, they can just kill you. That's not freedom. If that's the case, we no longer live in a free country. And last I checked, our Constitution is supposed to be the law of the land. Our Constitution says people like this regime must be removed from power through impeachment, through Article 2, Section 4. The whole thing has to go. It's rotten from top to bottom. These people are criminals. They are incredibly corrupt. They act lawlessly. They think they can just act with impunity. They're doing it around the world right now, making threats. Venezuela, Cuba, Mexico, Greenland, and who knows where else. For national security purposes, they should be impeached, removed, convicted. And then they should be facing a whole slew of indictments. These people have committed so many goddamn crimes. This is the most pro-crime regime I've ever seen. You right-wingers get so obsessed with black and brown people that in most cases, they're not even guilty of anything. You just want them to be brutalized and have their rights ignored. And fuck you for that. You're a shitty person. You're a bad American. You're uncivil. You're uncivilized. You need to get some fucking media literacy, some empathy, some political literacy. You need to go take civics again. You need to take a course on the Constitution. Harvard's got a free one online. You could do it if you have internet access. These people have gotten so many people killed by their heinous, illegitimate actions. Doge, everybody involved in Doge should be thoroughly investigated. These people strip our healthcare, and you're going to still defend it? They're going to close a whole bunch of hospitals down. They're going to do irresponsible, basically eugenics with their health policies. Seriously? Taking money away from FEMA to divert it to ICE? To hire a bunch of lawless, far right-wing extremists, disgusting fucking Nazis, white supremacists, racists, bigots, people that have serious problems with women. These people they're unemployable. And that's who, and barely train them. No, these are actions of monsters, absolute monsters. And this whole might makes right bullshit. Guys, there's a fucking boomerang that goes along with that. That is a recipe for making the world unsafe. You guys talk about how you're like worried about terrorism. What do you think happens when you go into other countries and invade them, take their shit, take advantage of cheap labor, abuse people, violate human rights, pollute their environment? What do you think that does to their perception of your country versus, I don't know, maybe just doing something that the United States hasn't done in decades, which is actual diplomacy, instead of being responsible for 73% of the world's dictators? We arm and fund them. What are we talking about here? He's talking about raising the military budget, the defense budget, to $1.5 trillion after we just went up from nearly $1 trillion to $1 trillion. 800 billion, I think it was. Totally unnecessary. Where's that going? To his rich buddies? It's corruption. It's graft. How anybody could support these people is beyond me. You are like immoral. You're thoughtless. You've just given up any ability to think for yourself at all. You just repeat talking points. Like I try to talk to people on the right all the time, and it just doesn't work because they have no comprehension. They have no commitment to the truth. They don't care about facts. They cannot think more than like a step ahead, and even that is grasping at straws. I'm not trying to insult people. It's just they're broken. They've been broken by the fucking media that's owned by people that are connected to the Trump regime. Fucking Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Larry Ellison. These people own like the vast majority of the media, and you're going to sit there and say that the left, like there's like a left bias. Like, what is that? When people actually tell the facts that make the right look bad, that's left bias? Really? Because that's what it is. Reality has a bias. Truth has a bias. When you want everybody to believe in your bullshit and they disagree with you because it's not factual, that's a you problem. And I'm not going to apologize while I'm telling the truth if it offends you. If you're offended by facts, you have a problem. You have a serious fucking problem. I want all of your lives to be better. I want these people removed from power. And I don't give a fuck about the Democratic Party either. They're just as much of a part of the problem. They have been better on some things. But the goddamn system is fucking broken because it serves very wealthy people and corporations. These wealthy people and corporations have basically turned our military into their security forces to do who knows what, who knows where, just so they can, I don't know, have better stock value at the expense of human misery. You want to sit there and pretend that our government can't do more for our people? You've had your eyes closed to what's going on in many other parts of the world. You look at the Scandinavian nations, they do a shit ton of stuff for their people, and they're way better off than we are. They're more educated, they have better health care, they take care of their kids, they care about their families. Like, fucking Republicans train that, like, they claim they're part of the family values party, but they make life impossible for families. You don't like rein in the cost of childcare. You're not doing anything for families. If you're making healthcare unaffordable, how are you supposed to have healthy families? If people have to work too fucking much because they can't afford to live, how is that good for families? They say they're for family values, but they don't do anything policy wise at all to make life better for American citizens. Republicans never have. It's tax cuts for the wealthy. It's stripping programs that would actually reduce crime, reduce suffering, help people get the help that they need when they need it, help people be more engaged. They're not sufficiently in investing in infrastructure. They're not breaking up these big corporations that are gobbling up more and more of the markets, and that drives down the quality of services and goods. And then they cut regulations, which make things even more unsafe, takes away our rights to have remedy for the harms that these corporations do. I mean, and the Democrats that go along with imperialism and colonialism and the endless fucking wars, and they're not speaking up enough. They don't, they're afraid to offend their donors. I'm not interested in that. I don't want a government. I don't want anybody in government that is remotely wrapped up in moneyed interests. Because if you are, you can't serve the people. And I think we should look at some other models from outside the United States. Like, there was one example that I heard yesterday of the policy they have in China, where they have people that are subject matter experts in some given policy areas, and they send them to a region, and they have a job to do. They do the job, and then they move them. They rotate their people. They don't have their people be stagnant. It's completely different than what we do with our politicians that just keep getting elected. It's financially motivated. Moneyed interests get to repeat investment into them, and things obviously get better for them. It's okay to look outside, especially when everybody's so fucking unhappy about shit. Obviously, things need to be done better. But you got to stop blaming the wrong people. You keep blaming the scapegoats that you have. There's a different one every other week. One day it's the Somalis, the other it's transgender people. It's, if you don't have anybody else to blame, you just blame the left, which makes no fucking sense, because the left doesn't have any representation fucking anywhere in any power centers. And you can't point to the shit that the left has done wrong. You just can't. The actual left in this country advocates for things that would be absolutely better than what we have now for all people. We don't discriminate against everybody or anybody. Maybe that's probably the complaint that you guys have, because you guys are bigots and racists and xenophobes, and that's what's been holding everybody back, and that's on you. You purposely make everyone else's life miserable because you can't stand the idea that things might get better for women. Women can have actual equal rights and equal protections under the law, same as men. And minorities, heaven forbid, if minorities who have made significant contributions to our society for decades, how dare they actually get their fair shake and be treated fairly? How dare they? That's on you. Look in the fucking mirror, man. That is not morality. That's bigotry. That's ignorance. That's hatred. That is a solvable problem, but you have to look inward to actually fix that shit. As you look anywhere where people actually like cooperate, where there's diversity, there's equity and actual inclusion, that is better for everybody, objectively, from a policy standpoint, from a practical standpoint, from a pragmatic standpoint. When you make sure everybody is at even keel, that the floor is like way higher, everybody's getting their needs met. Like, when we have people that are like homeless and struggling and stuff like that, it's a lack of cash. It's a lack of access to the things that they need. It's not a lack of character. And the inability to understand that is a lack of character on your part, a lack of knowledge on your part, a lack of compassion, a lack of empathy, a lack of humanity. That's on you. And I stand 10 toes down on that. I'm a proud American. I don't always like what my country does. I recognize that we have high and low points in our history. We haven't always done the right thing. We try to improve. But unfortunately, a small minority of people, who is the most dangerous minority in the world, really, it's the 0.1% that hoard money, seek to gain enough power to suppress us all, and they just keep taking. If they ruin our lives in the process, it seems like that's a bonus for them, because they're sadistic freaks. Money corrupts. Money corrupts your mind. Money corrupts your morals. Like, I mean, it's hard to look at people in, that are so-called successful, very successful in business, and find their morality and their humanity. It's not related to their business decision making, and I think that's a mistake. And I think humanity has suffered for that. People think that the left is like naive. No, we're not. No, we're not. We're not remotely naive. We know we're not always going to get things right, but we know. Okay, sorry. Day two. My memory storage ran out. So I was saying, leftists are not naive. We recognize that what we are trying to do for all of us is not going to be easy. That we have like every institutional disadvantage against us. But the fact of the matter is, just because something is very hard to do doesn't mean that you shouldn't try to do it. We recognize that the changes we want to make may take a generation or two to make happen. We recognize that it is a heavy, heavy lift. But it is a worthy pursuit, because when you have so many millions, if not billions, of lives that are impacted by us not doing these things, that's what makes it worth doing. Like, if I were able to snap my fingers, which is not the way this works, but I just want you to picture a different reality than we have now, that is not only possible, it's already happening in many different ways in other parts of the world. And that's a policy thing. It is not a people thing. I mean, it's a people thing in the sense that when people have the political will to make change, they say, we're going to do this. Like, I'll give you a case example, right? Zohran Mamdani. He got historic turnout for his primary. He got historic turnout for the general. He beat the Republican establishment, the Democratic establishment. He beat big money. He had all this opposition because he listened to the people and he put a policy set inspired by democratic socialist ideology. From a policy perspective, he said, I hear you. I feel you. I live these struggles too. These, I believe, are the policies that we need to address your grievances with how government functions currently against known private interest barriers that are making life basically unlivable as we progress each day, each month, each year. He said one of the campaign promises was childcare is unaffordable. We're going to make it free for New Yorkers. We're talking about an affordability crisis. When childcare can cost as much as somebody's rent or a mortgage, or too much. So making that free is a massive change. That affords so many more people to be able to live and live well, and also participate in the economy. For as long as we have capitalism, what does capitalism need? It needs products, goods, services, and a consumer base. When so much of our money now goes towards debt, which is hoarded by what? Mostly like BlackRock. When you look at the numbers, that's not going into the local economy. That's not serving local businesses. That's a lot of money that is just not available to make businesses thrive and survive. So it's a circle. It's a full circle thing. We all are actually a collective. We have our individual lives, we have our individual choices, but those exist within a system that we all have involuntarily opted into, which that's where government fits in. So when the people say, I can't do this childcare thing no more, it's too expensive. And Zohran Mamdani ran on that as one of his campaign promises, that he's going to make it free for New Yorkers. He got a commitment from Kathy Hochul. And how are they going to fund that? They're going to raise taxes on millionaires and billionaires at levels that exist just across the way in New Jersey. So it's not remotely extreme. It's not remotely unreasonable. I mean, hell, we're supposed to be doing a wealth tax, a one-time wealth tax on billionaires in California, and even a massive figure in the tech sector, the head of NVIDIA. He said, when asked about that tax, he's like, I haven't really given it a second thought. If we need a tax at that level, that's fine. Not a big deal. Doesn't change my business. We go where the talent is. And who develops that talent, by the way? A lot of that talent is developed by publicly funded education. A lot of companies that benefit from a lot of the things that the rest of society contributes to, public and private interests. My preference would be a lot more public interests, so we can do a lot more public planning and rein in any harmful outcomes that we're seeing anywhere, because private companies have gotten to be, in some cases, too big to hold accountable in any sort of meaningful way to change their behavior. So I was going to say, imagine a world where in the United States, we stopped our militarism. We stopped regime change wars. We stopped undermining the sovereignty of other nations. We allowed those sovereign nations to thrive in the ways that they choose for them. If their people are getting the things that they need, there is no fuel for radicalization. You get radicalization when you put people under threat, when you make it nearly impossible for them to survive, when you basically put them in opposition to their own people and their own government. And that is what the United States has done for decades. So we could probably significantly reduce the military budget, the Pentagon budget, to probably, I don't know, less than a quarter, maybe even a tenth of what we spend now. So we have a genuine defensive position only. We probably fold up the CIA because they have just, it seems like they have gone rogue time and time and time again. Yeah, I think the security apparatus would not be necessarily as big as it is if we changed our posture in the world. If we stopped ratcheting things up all the time, choking other countries off so they have to spend ridiculous amounts of money. If we could just be better partners in the world, helping stabilize the world, making sure that people get their needs met, making sure we have good diplomatic relations, we would actually not be seen as a threat to global national security. We would be seen as a force of actual good in the world, an actual shining city on the hill. If we had universal healthcare, by the way, there's like 71 modern nations, or 70 out of 71 modern nations have universal healthcare. They pay less than half for healthcare. They have some kind of universal system, some kind of single payer system. People pay with taxes. They have taxes at higher rates. People imagine a situation where having wonderful, beautiful housing, beautiful communities was a guarantee in some way. So whether that's you're doing a local public service job, and that guarantees you housing for life, guaranteed pension, like a universal pension program across the United States, make having union membership quick process if you want to unionize. That way there's a check on especially private corporate interest, change corporate law. So profit is not the main motivation. We can change the rules about what's expected of corporations, because like the whole shareholder thing shareholder interest only, like a mandated, this has to be, produce more value for the shareholders, hasn't worked out. It basically locks us into concentrating wealth in the hands of very few people, which has fundamentally undermined our democracy, and it's threatened other nations' independence and sovereignty as well. So imagine that dynamic is different. Like we could have initiatives about when you're building products, the expectation is a multi-use cycle. We can reward ingenuity with, or even have like a competitive situation where local counties, local or like local companies, nonprofits or whatever, where they are in some kind of competition for like a green initiative with a recognition that we should be using reusable things. We should be building more things that are renewable. We should be simplifying. We should be um, reversing course against things like planned obsolescence. If you're not focused on profit, you can solve a lot of problems, human problems, and we can reward those things. So I think non-for-profits should get subsidies for those kinds of initiatives. I think all citizens should get a subsidy known as UBI. So raise the floor. So like if we know high quality of life standard, if you can have it be local, for, because like it depends on like the housing and stuff that's there. Um, but we could say, right, whatever is a high standard of living, that's what everybody gets at a base level for a month, whatever that costs. And really, like the cost is not relevant because like we make up prices. The country can spend whatever the hell it wants to. Seems like we do that when we go to war. Like there's not like taxes raised in order to go to war. We just pay for it. When we want to give rich people tax breaks, there doesn't seem to be a plan to pay for that, other than just Republicans always use it as an excuse to cut programs that people need. So imagine you have housing as a guarantee, healthcare as a guarantee. You have clean, renewable initiatives. You reward, you know, like people that are tradesmen, people that are craftsmen, that are setting up various initiatives to teach the youth, and like modernize some of the old school practices for modern day, based on modern day methods and materials. We can change society fundamentally if we just decide to. So we got to go to work, and we don't have to accept the unacceptable anymore. So I want amazing education for everybody, and I also want practical education. Like I think media literacy should be part of the coursework. Political literacy should be part of the coursework. People being trained in how to recognize propaganda. I think politicians should be disincentivized to lie to the populace. Same with media figures. I think everybody should be held to a higher ethical standard that's across the board. I think there should be penalties for lying to the public when you have a significant audience, and even for people that don't have a significant audience. I think there should be more or less like a red flag on your profile if you're caught lying, at least about certain things that are in the public interest, for people to know the actual truth, and the lies about what's being spoken about can do real material harm. I also think that stochastic terrorism should be something that has something like a criminal level penalty. Like I don't think necessarily that you need to go do jail time, but I think you need to get services, education, and supports, so you don't engage in those kind of practices. Because people that engage in that kind of behavior, there's usually some kind of underlying issue going on. So I think that's a mental health issue. Um, yeah, so like healthcare, and that's everything. Like you're like, why are we separating our eye care, dental care from our healthcare is always been weird to me. Childcare, obviously, thank you, Zoran Montani. I think in New Mexico they did it too. They had free childcare. We should have amazing education. I went to school in Florida Institute of Technology for my BCBA certification coursework, and I learned about a lot of really great teaching practices in that process. And I know that, there are always developing best practices, but I think those should be the sort of like factories for um, learning, teaching people best practice, and also like rolling those out and updating our public institutions of learning with incorporating those best practices. We need to have good standards for education. An educated populace is a healthier populace. We need to have more direct democracy. I think there should be more co-op models. I'd like to see more businesses that people can pass down from generation after generation. I think the corporatization of everything, the big guy gobbling everything up, I think that's ultimately been really harmful. And you guys should take a look at there's a documentary on Netflix called Downfall, the case against Boeing. I just watched it yesterday. I would highly encourage you guys to check that out. But basically, some of that had to do with the fact that like another, I forget which one, but another corporation basically like bought Boeing, and they went from a company that had really high standards. It was a really great place to work for people. People were very proud of it. They had genuinely like a lot of great ingenuity, and it was like what I think of as a good example of a great American company that got ruined by capitalism, by shareholder capitalism, because the new company just basically said all that matters is shareholder value, and then they start cutting corners, and then lo and behold, we end up having people die as a result. Like they tried to skirt regulations, they tried to cut costs. They didn't want to have training for their pilots on this one system with only one failsafe, which is like universally like that's not what they do. You don't do that when you're dealing with critical safety components. There needs to be at least like backup systems for a reason. Like you have redundancies when things cannot fail, which makes perfect sense. But I think the mentality of for profit at all sake means that you're basically saying we are willing to sacrifice lives so line can go up. And I think that's fundamentally it's anti-human, it's immoral, and I think those kind of practices need to be put on the extinction list of human behavior. That's my perspective, but I don't think that's unreasonable. That's not even a partisan thing whatsoever. Like, who is going to say, well, we can either make sure that a lot of people are going to die so line can go up, or line goes up a little bit less, but ultimately line goes up more stable when we have the highest possible standards and the highest like possible safety, and so which is a commitment that they should have for their passengers, right? When you have human lives that you're playing with, I think profit is not a concern of anybody. And Boeing did plenty well when they had high safety standards, when they actually had a high commitment to having high, like the highest possible quality expectations, and people it was like encouraged for people to bring concerns up previously when it was just Boeing. And then it changed when the profit motive mattered more. When whistleblowers would be not whistleblowers, people that came forward with concerns, especially written concerns, they would be fired, laid off, or they would quit. We should not want that in any sort of atmosphere. So I think in a lot of these cases with a lot of these corporations, I think they should probably be acquired through eminent domain, and the profit, they should automatically be turned into a nonprofit model with a focus on a stronger commitment to the people that are in the workforce, and also the people that are going to be accessing the products and services, and just eliminate the profit motive. The motive should be safe. It should be durable. It should be something that lasts and lasts and lasts. If we're talking about products, I think it should be primarily like bad business models. Basically, it's like, how do we make this thing better so it doesn't need to be replaced so often, so it doesn't actually end up in the environment of some third world country that has to deal with it. At just that's just the cost of doing business, and I don't accept that. I don't accept the immoral position that we have a right to just pollute the entire world and call that success under capitalism. I think that's heinous. especially when we know that the contaminations cause cancer and all sorts of other harms. So being responsible as a citizen, as a company, as a government, we have to factor those things in. And that should not be an acceptable practice anymore. So that's my thoughts. I'm not naive. I just think the work is worth it. That's all.